And a good Thursday morning, Birds fans. Appreciate you streaming in with us. Us being Mac and Mac here on Birds 365 on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. We got what we believe is a good one planned for you. Two good guests joining us today. There is some Eagle news to talk about. No major player movement, but the Eagles did take a hit yesterday, or it became the word got out that they're going to take a hit within the next couple of months. One of the key executives in the Eagles front office, Johnny Mack, has let it be known that he is going to fly the coop after the draft takes place in April. Jake Rosenberg, a guy who you mention often here on the show, Howie Roseman's right-hand man when it comes to managing the cap and contract negotiation, is moving on from the Eagles because his ultimate goal is to become a general manager. And it's funny that these things sometimes happen in a particular order. We were just talking yesterday about the percentage of Howie Roseman's lifetime contract here in Philadelphia, how he can't be fired, won't be fired, how little chance there is that Howie Roseman is fired. And Jake Rosenberg must have been listening, because he goes, yeah, they're right. McMullen's at 95, McDonald's at 99. One of our two guests commented on it yesterday too and said, yeah, he's pretty much 100%. How he's going nowhere fast. Well, Jake Rosenberg understands that, knows that, heard that, and said, if I want to become a GM, chances are I'm going to have to go somewhere else. And that is his plan for after the draft to leave the Eagles organization. You sent me a text, catching it on Twitter, hour and a half after the show yesterday. And my response to you was, does he have a landing spot? Do we know where he's going yet? And you said, no, not yet. Do you think that he's got feeler? You think that that's just something that they're keeping under wraps? Do you think it's a foregone conclusion that a guy who's well respected around the league like Rosenberg already knows where he's going to be next after his contract runs out with the Eagles after the draft?
Yeah, I don't think he's leaving without a plan, and he's so well respected. I mean, you know, he's unknown and he's behind the scenes, and I think we're one of those that bring him up more than just about anybody else.
Right.
But not a lot of people know him. But you saw Mike McCartney. It's interesting. We talked about Mike McCartney this week because, you know, the super agent who gets Kirk Cousins all his monster deals. He's talking about how great Jake was. Nicole Lynn, Jalen Hurts' agent, largest contract in Eagles history at the time, largest contract in NFL history for about 5 minutes. Talked about how great he was and what a class he was. Yeah, he's going to get another landing spot, but as we know, and the Eagles currently are under investigation. He's under contract. Nobody can overtly say they're talking to him.
Good point.
Well, yeah, I imagine there's or text and things like that. So he wants to stay in the NFL, obviously, because he wants to become GM. And you're right, another we were talking about Howie Roseman and how locked in he was as general manager. But I don't think it was about that. I think it was about the path. Because a lot of people leave Philadelphia and get better jobs, GM jobs, Andrew Berry, assistant GM jobs all over the place, Brandon Brown, Ian Cunningham. And 2 years ago when Andy Weidel left, another big job to get an assistant GM job with Pittsburgh, his hometown team, they elevated Sean Ferrari and Alec Allaby. And I think that's when Jake said himself behind the scenes, well, you know, they have me pigeonholed to a certain degree. You know, why assistant GM? That's what I think the issue was. Everybody knows how he's not going anywhere. But Alec Allaby already had 2 interviews to be a GM this offseason. He's in position. He made that leap to get a job somewhere else. Jake doesn't see the path here to take that leap now, and he's got to go somewhere else. He's not going to be a GM immediately. He's going to go somewhere, insert name as insert title, assistant GM, salary cap administrator, whatever. They come up with 67 different titles. And then I'll have a path to become a GM path, not Howie. Everybody knows Howie's not going anywhere, but Alec Hallaby and John Ferrari are now in positions seasons and to be general managers elsewhere. Jake didn't see that path here. And you remember a couple years ago, Laurie talked about how many future GMs in the building, and it was one of the tumble brats.
GM factory. They replaced the
tends to
quarterback factory. They became the GM factory.
Yeah. And he's right. And they got so many glut of people. And they have Bryce Johnston. They've been talking about him. You think about things that Bryce's name, and they've been talking about him recently. Now you know why. He's positioned to sort of be elevated. Andrew Berry's brother is now in the organization as that Ivy League background and can help with the financial stuff. So they're well prepared for it. But guy's really good, man, really good. And I've heard that from so many people for so many years. He's been here for 12 years. He's known Howie since elementary school. I mean, those two were very, very tight. And all you look at the league and how they handle contracts. Everybody's copying the Eagles. And Howie deserves a ton of credit for that, but Jake does as well.
And we talked, you brought up about the titles and the fact that Howie went forever without an assistant general manager. And I know titles are titles, understandings within the organization of the pecking order and how things get done, much more important than titles. Titles are just something that McDonald and McMullen use on Birds 365 to try and explain things. You can, even if, let's say the Jeff Lurie was, and this is completely hypothetical, this isn't happening. Jeff Lurie today says, we can't afford to lose Jake Rosenberg. And he fired Howie Roseman. And we're all woefully wrong about Howie's lifetime contract. Oh, he could elevate Jake Rosenberg over the two assistant general. It doesn't mean because you're an assistant general manager, you have to be the next in line. No, it's a title. Most times it follows that that's the way the procedure works, but it's not a given. It's not a rule. It's not locked in. Jake Rosenberg could jump over all of them if Jeff Lurie so decided to do that. But Jake, as you said, probably sees the path and defines the path and understands and says, no, I'm down in the pecking order and I need to go somewhere else where I'll be a little higher in the pecking order. That when that general manager job opens up, I'm the first candidate or one of the top two candidates, something like that. That's the way the National Football League works. And yeah, it'll be lost. The Eagles are very good at having depth, not only on their football team, but within their organization, because they've lost guys before. You threw out a bunch of names of guys who have relocated to become assistant general managers in other teams, front offices. They weren't caught flat-footed by this. I'm sure they have a situation where they're ready to elevate people and cover the job responsibilities. But there's no question in my mind that Rosenberg brings skills to that job. So will the next individual who's asked to step into those shoes, is he ready for it? We'll find out over time. But the fact that he got glowing praise from some key individuals that he has been doing negotiating with. It's not just get out your calculator and figure out the salary cap. There is negotiating as part of the responsibility there. How we can't negotiate with when you're in the fire like they were this past month with free agency and you're talking to 25 different agents at once. You need different people to be on the phone, to talk to those guys, to lay the groundwork for eventual negotiation. So, yeah, I think this is a potential bit of a loss. Now, this is one of the most fun things I love to talk about, and it just annoys the snot out of people within the industry and also fans. He's going to work for the Eagles for another couple of months. He's already made it known, yeah, my contract's up. I'm not going to be re-signing. I'm going somewhere else. And John McMullen just said on Birds 365, and if he didn't say it, I would have said it. Yeah, chances are he knows he's going to be working with next. No one will admit to that because tampering charges are in the offing. Yes, Roger Goodell yesterday gave us an update on the Eagles tampering charges with Saquon Barkley I wrote it down. I got to give you the exact quote because it's actually hilarious. We're working on it immediately. We're immediately working on it. No, you're not. There's no new news. That's just another way to say, you don't bother me about this one. We haven't gotten all the details we need yet. So yeah, they're looking into it. The Eagles may actually be found guilty of tampering.
What details do they need with the Atlanta Falcons? I mean,
Yeah.
they were the hand is in the cookie jar. There's no the PR people didn't prepare Kirk Cousins right, and he said, "Yeah, I talked to everybody before he was allowed to talk to everybody." What more needs to be said with Atlanta? I don't know.
Hard at work at it immediately. Roger Goodell's 6-word response to the question yesterday. So yeah, Falcons in bigger trouble than the Eagles are. Even if they're found guilty, it's going to be a slap on the wrist. I don't think it's going to be anything major. And you know what it reminded me of when I saw something this week? I thought of the Eagles, the Shohei Ohtani thing, because he had his press conference gathering through his newest interpreter, and man, did he double down. He lied. My God, I didn't bet. I don't know anything about betting. I don't know the individual that is going to be charged with running an illegal gambling thing. Not me. Everybody lied. So Shohei absolutely jumped into the deep end of the pool of I know nothing, like Sergeant Schultz. Some of our older streamers.
Yeah, I'll get that. I don't know how many will.
Not everybody else.
But it landed with me.
It did. Good. I know nothing. And Howie Roseman kind of said that about the Eagle tampering charge. I don't know what he's talking about. I didn't talk to Saquon. Saquon may have James Franklin may have misinterpreted that we talked to Saquon's agent, who may have relayed that to Saquon. And, hey, you're coming back to Pennsylvania. And Penn, no, you love your time at Penn State. The Eagles put a hard and fast, we did not do that, stamp on it. If it's found out that they did, then the tampering charges actually might be significant. If they find out they didn't, then it's going to be nothing. So that's still to be determined. But yeah, there's the NFL spends 365 days a year, and I always just find it funny that a guy says ahead of time he's out the door, but he's expected to put in every ounce of effort and keep secrets to himself because the draft is coming up, and there's the battle of misinformation and putting stuff out there. We're gonna have a draft guest later in the show today. That process is about to kick in. That the owners are over. That's all we're going to talk about for the next month is the draft. Jake is already looking at his new potential employer, but he's got to work for the Eagles for the next month, and he's got to put in every effort for the Eagles, and he knows what the Eagles have been thinking, and he's seen all the scouting reports. It's just a wacky way that things work. I don't know that there's a way around it, John, but don't you find that strange? I love when this is.
I don't find it strange for this reason, Jody. If you think about in normal business, some people have 9-to-5 jobs, but some people have contractual jobs, and you're signed for a certain amount of time. And sometimes when it's coming up and they haven't renewed it, you start looking around, and maybe you make a deal behind the scenes with somebody else, and you're going somewhere else, but you got to fulfill your contract. And most people are professional, and most people do it well. And even 9-to-5 jobs, non-contractual, most people who are responsible give their 2 weeks notice, and they go to their other job, and they still work, and they still do their job. And that's what I expect from Jake. And that's typically what happens. Now, I always talk about the NFL because the light is shined on the coaches, the players, and all that. And we all know the new league year starts March 13th, and free agency and personnel. The draft and scouting and football administration, I've talked about this on the show. I'm going to do a humble brag for Birds 365. You guys know about Jake Rosenberg if you listen to this show. Not a lot of people do. Not a lot of people know there's 2 different calendars. That those guys are on calendar from draft to draft. Their contracts expire after the draft. So you'll see all over the league scouts moving from place to place because they have a different calendar and a different schedule when their contracts come up. So it's business as usual, and it happens all the time in this league. And I would argue it happens all the time in life. People leave one position to go to another position, and they fulfill their contract, and they
Right.
fulfill it, and they go on.
Here's why I disagree. Happens all the time in life. No, a very small percentage of people in this entire world have a contract that they have expiring, and then they are going to get in 2 weeks' notice, is not 4 weeks' notice, leading up to the most important time of the year. For scouts, it's all about the draft. That's why the contract runs from draft to draft, because it's mostly about the draft. Usually you don't have someone walking out the door, in this very small percentage of people that actually fall into this category, walking out the door as soon as it's over. Do the most important your job part of your
But
job,
that's what I'm
and then
saying.
get out the door.
That is absolutely not the case. Andy Weidel was gone. Andy Weidel's contract was expiring. He was going back to Pittsburgh. He worked through the draft. He did his job. He did his job like he usually does his job as a professional, as a guy who's an assistant GM, maybe a future GM in this league. And then he was off to Pittsburgh. I'm telling you, Jody, it happens all the time in this league. Now, a lot of the scouts, and it happens with, sometimes they leave on their own accord. More times than not, they leave because they're shown the door, and they're essentially fired, or their contracts are let to expire. But the movement is significant. And Howie tried to change that rule because he got burnt by it with that 1 year with Brandon Brown and Ian Cunningham. And he wanted to change the hiring cycle. And they did a little bit on the calendar because of that. But
Right. Howie and I are seeing it's the same thing. It can put you in a disadvantageous position depending on all the situations and the circumstances of why the guy's leaving, where he's leaving to, and when he's leaving.
Well, it can, but I mean, the Eagles and this, I've given them many plaudits, so now I'm giving them some negatives on their mark. They get kind of pissy when people leave, like Brandon Brown, most recently, Brandon Brown and Jonathan Gannon, obviously. It happens to everybody.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I mean, that's part of it. You should take pride in the fact that people want to hire your people, and they do.
Jeffrey
When they
does.
settle down and the anger subsides, they do. And they say, look at us, and puff our chest out.
Mhm.
And they should.
Yep.
Because they're very good at it. But they do get a little upset. In the case of Brandon, it was because he went to the Giants in division, all that kind of stuff. In the case of Gannon, it's because of the timing, and they missed out on Vic and all that kind of stuff. But it happens to everybody. Baltimore got decimated this year. Decimated. They didn't even win. They got decimated.
They won the AFC regular season title, didn't win the actual AFC playoffs. That went to the Chiefs again, and that's the way it is in the National Football League. So I'm not surprised that Jake Rosenberg is locating elsewhere, even though we don't know where that is yet, but we both assume that it's going to happen because he's been a valued member of the Eagle organization over the last several years. He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. I see we got Johnny Stolnis, our buddy from Bleeding Green Nation, in the jump aboard. We haven't had him on since free agency kicked in. I did a great spot on BGN about the rule changes and how it will affect the Philadelphia Eagles. Going to have fun talking to our boy, John Stolnis from Bleeding Green Nation. He jumps in next here on Birds 365.